Thanks for taking time to listening to this webinar. Thanks also to the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Department of Her Majesty's Government here in the United Kingdom, and to King's College London for arranging and hosting this webinar. My name is Rakesh Burgle. I think I've met some of you before, not all of you. I work for Nuclear Transport Solutions, where I am the Chief Information Security Officer. Nuclear Transport Solutions is a nuclear transporter of category up to and including category 1 nuclear materials. We're multimodal, which means that we do that by rail, by marine and by road means as well. And we might touch on some of that stuff as we go through, because some of it is relevant. Me and my team cover the protection of cyber security systems, IT systems, particularly corporate IT systems, but also operational technology systems on board our nuclear cargo vessels and on board rail systems in the United Kingdom. I've delivered a few webinars for BAYS and for King's College now, but I'm particularly excited about this one because for the first time we're going to show you a ransomware attack and actually do a demonstration, a step-by-step demonstration of what a ransomware attack actually looks like. A webinar probably isn't the best way to do this, but it was kind of a good way in order to get people thinking about it and interacting with it as well. And it'll give you the opportunity to ask questions later. So fingers crossed that demonstration does work. Carrying out the demo will be my colleague John Tier. John, if you could just please introduce yourself.
Good day, everybody. My name is John Tier. I also work for Nuclear Transport Solutions. I'm the Technical Cybersecurity Manager. I've worked in the civil nuclear industry for probably about 20-something years, 20-odd years in IT, and then moved over into cybersecurity probably in the last 12 months, but done some cybersecurity defense probably for the last 6-7 years. And as Kesh says, I'm going to carry out the demonstration, and hopefully it goes well.
Thanks, John. What John hasn't said is that he's very skilled at offensive and defensive cybersecurity. So John can deconstruct malware attacks, but he can also create his own malware attacks. And the attack that you're going to see later is a piece of ransomware that John himself wrote. So John is very skilled at what he does. We also have Lauren Gorge with us. Lauren, please introduce yourself.
Hello all, hope you're all well. My name's Lauren. I've recently completed a cybersecurity apprenticeship, now working with Nuclear Transport Solutions as an information assurance officer within the information governance team. So I'm just going to be assisting behind the scenes today, adding some links to the chat, some useful guidance and advice. Thanks, Kesh.
Thank you, Lauren. So Lauren was a cybersecurity apprentice with us, but we've been so impressed with the work she's been doing. We've offered her a full-time job. We're very keen on developing a pipeline of younger talent in cybersecurity, and Lauren is a product of that pipeline. You may have issues in your own countries around cybersecurity skills shortages, and here in the United Kingdom, we've created a pipeline for that talent, starting at a very young age, even from school age. So anyway, let's start with the content of the webinar. I think to begin with, I'd like to talk about something that happened in 2017, and that is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom became victim to a piece of ransomware called WannaCry. But as a result of this ransomware, 19,000 medical appointments were cancelled. And actually, there was a really good case to argue that people's lives were put at risk because of this ransomware attack. The attack and the recovery from it cost the UK taxpayer £92 million. And globally, I think it was over 200,000 computers were affected by the attack in 150 countries. So this was not a sort of targeted or a very small attack located in a certain part of the world. This happened across the globe. The total cost around the globe is estimated to be £6 billion. So that's not million, but billion, £6 billion. I sort of introduced that as part of this because I think it's relevant in terms of the impact of such attacks. But one of the products from this was the NHS produced a very good lessons learned document, and that lessons learned document should be appearing in your chat stream now. And much of what we're going to talk about today actually appears in that lessons learned document as well. So please, at your leisure, have a look at that document as well. So let's begin with the presentation. These are the learning outcomes that I'd like to try and achieve. We're going to make you sort of learn about how ransomware attacks are initiated, what the consequences are of ransomware attacks, and in particular, what about paying ransoms? Should you pay the ransom? That's a question that will come up. What an attack actually looks like through a live demonstration, and what are the ways in which we can prevent ransomware attacks happening in the future. So some of the subjects that we'll talk about here on the next slide, which is what is malware and ransomware. So a very quick couple of slides on definitions, because I think definitions are important. A case study I'll be talking about, which is the Colonial Pipeline case in America, which happened last year in May. So it's a very, very recent ransomware case. The lessons learned from that, and then we'll go to John's demonstration of the ransomware itself. Having seen the actual demonstration, we'll then talk about the good practice to prevent ransomware attacks happening to you. And then we'll tackle the vexed question of, should you actually pay a ransom in the first place? Differing schools of thought on that, and well, let's get to that when we get to it. And then I also wanted to talk about cyber insurance. No, I'm by no means an expert on cyber insurance, but I think it's something that we should and can talk about to the degree that we can, and maybe it's a subject to talk about in a future webinar. And then we'll finish on some key lessons. So that is the breakdown. We're going to be helpful, and at the end of it, we're going to put some links to good practice for you on the last slide or in the chat stream, and hopefully you'll find those links very useful too. So what is malware? So I think malware refers to any software developed by cyber criminals that steals data, damages or destroys computers, and generally affects computer systems. I've put in brackets there that affect the CIA triad. If you've been to any of my webinars before, one of the first ones I mentioned is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad, which are the qualities of information security. So malware will affect the confidentiality of a system, the integrity of a system, or the availability of a system. And some, common malware is viruses, worms, Trojans, spyware, adware, and ransomware. And ransomware is the one that we're going to concentrate on today. The other ones are important. I mean, you can look at those at your leisure online, but ransomware seems to be the current and prevalent threat, and it's the one that we're concentrating on, as well as other threats in nuclear transport solutions as well. So what is ransomware? It's a type of ransomware that denies access to your files, and that's really important sentence there. It denies access to your files. So in that sense, it's an availability attack. But on top of that, you are offered access to your files, but only if you pay some money to the people that denied you access in the first place. And so therefore, that's the ransom part, and therefore it's ransomware. It's a very significant threat. Currently, the NCSC in the United Kingdom have recently produced various documents relating to ransomware, and the Department of Homeland Security in America are consistently and continually tweeting about ransomware from their Twitter accounts. So given those definitions, I'd like some interaction now, please, if you would. So we have the first poll. Has anyone here actually experienced a ransomware attack? So Carl, if you could pull up the first poll.
Thanks, Cash. Just changing over now.
I mean, you might be, I mean, if you have actually experienced attack, I'm going to ask whether you'd be willing to speak a little bit about it. You don't have to talk about details or anything like that. And if you haven't, that's fine too, because this webinar will help you.
Thanks, Kesh. Looks like most people have not or aren't quite aware.
Okay, that's fine. So I think we'll move on. So I think this webinar will help you if you haven't experienced a ransomware attack. I personally haven't either. I've heard many stories about people who have, and it sounds to me like something that I would never ever want to experience. I would suggest that none of you would want to experience that as well. So I think this webinar comes at a timely time. So I think we'll move on to the next poll. The next slide is actually another poll for you. And do you think you should pay a ransom if your system is made unavailable through a ransomware attack? Interesting. Okay, not sure. There's quite a few no's. There's no yeses yet. That's interesting too. That we've got a yes. Carl, if you wouldn't mind noting down these figures.
Absolutely. Cheers, Kesh.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got 15 responses so far. The majority are saying that either they wouldn't or they're not sure. There's a few more coming now for yeses. I hesitate to say we're even on this, but there you go. Oh, we've got another yes. Okay, let's stop it there. So quite a lot of people who wouldn't or aren't sure, and 5 people who would. That's interesting. We're going to go through this webinar and we're going to ask you the same question again later, and we're going to compare the results and see what's changed and why we think it might have changed. Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it. I'm going to start with the Colonial. If we can switch back to mine, do I?
Oh, thanks, Kesh. Yes, that's for you to
yeah, I'll do that. Hopefully you can see that now. We should be on, it says poll 2, but we're going to move on to the next slide.
Perfect, thanks, Kesh. We can see that.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about the Colonial Pipeline incident. So the Colonial Pipeline in the United States, one of the largest oil pipelines in the United States, and it supplies fuel from Texas right down in the southeast coast there, right up to the very north to New Jersey. I think that I read statistics, it's something like 2.5 million barrels of oil, of refined fuel every day. That's 2.5 million barrels every day. So they fell victim to a ransomware attack in May 2021. So this is very, very recent. It's not even a year old, this. The FBI attributed the attack to a criminal group called DarkSide. And what actually happened was it affected corporate computers. Now, because it affected the corporate computers, they couldn't manage the pipeline in that sense. And what they did was they had to shut down the pipeline for several days. This resulted, so the impact is really important here. The impact was fuel shortages in up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States, and higher fuel prices as well. So fuel prices went up, and significantly President Biden then declared a state of emergency just from this single attack. There were, I think, yeah, I've said 2.5 million barrels per day. I've already said that. So that's a pretty significant event. And in the title there, you see how a reused password led to a state of emergency. And that's important because the root cause of this, the way that the attackers got into the system, was a reused password. And I'll talk about that later in a later slide. But here's a timeline of events during that actual case. So on May the 6th, 2021, a compromised VPN password was used to hack Colonial Pipeline. network. And they stole 100 gigabytes of data from Colonial Pipeline and then threatened to release that data on the internet if a ransom wasn't paid. A ransom wasn't paid at that particular point, but on the next day, the attackers started their ransomware attack. And they demanded 75 bitcoins, which was around $4.4 million ransom at that particular point in time. And significantly, Colonial Pipeline decided to pay almost immediately. And we can have opinions about whether that was the right or the wrong thing to do, but they just paid, and let's just leave it at that for now. On May the 12th, operations restarted. So it was a full 5 days after the ransom was paid that operations restarted. Why is that? I think that's because when the decryption key was supplied to decrypt all the files again, that took a long time, a long process, and then they had to then restart operations in a controlled fashion. So that took 5 days in total. On June the 7th, so a month or so later, actually the United States Department of Justice recovered 63.7 bitcoins, so $2.3 million of the original ransom. Not quite sure how they did it. I'm sure there's some detail around how that could have occurred, but it's not really the point of this presentation. So actually, I've just noticed that I need to get rid of that little thing there. Significantly, a lot of that ransom was recovered by the US Department of Justice. And there's a few key points around all of this situation. The first one is that it's easy to make a mistake with ransomware. And DarkSide issued an apology. Well, it was kind of an apology. What they said was, listen, guys, we didn't mean to cause all this much hassle. We didn't mean to cause American citizens harm in this way. We just wanted to make some money. So yeah, hands up, sorry about that. It was kind of half-hearted apology. And the reason I say it's easy to make a mistake with ransomware was if you don't understand the impact of what you're going to do with ransomware, then it's easy for that ransomware to have an effect that you never intended in the first place. Or if you put it another way, if you make some ransomware, you never know where that ransomware is going to end up and how widespread the attack will be. So it is very easy to make a mistake, and John will tell you about an incident when he does his demonstration, when he was setting up the demonstration, how he nearly lost access to all of his files. John is going to tell you about that later. The initiator for these ransomware attacks is almost always a target attack, and it's almost always a spear phishing attack using email or something like that. So an email is sent into somebody in your organization, and I've talked about this in my webinars previously, and somebody clicks on a link and some malware is downloaded, and before you know it, the attack has started. So we need to pay attention to the very start of the cyber kill chain. If you're not aware of the cyber kill chain, I did a webinar on it last October, I think it was. That's now available on YouTube as well, and we'll try and get the link for that into the chat thread. So at the very start of the cyber kill chain is the reconnaissance phase, and in the reconnaissance phase, you find out who you're going to attack and why you might want to attack them in particular, and it tends to be IT professionals because they are more than likely to have administrator access to accounts. So the initiator is almost always a target attack, and it's almost always an email that gets people to click on a link. In this particular case, it wasn't. It was a reused password. What do we mean by reused password? So a reused password is a password that's used on one website by an individual for a particular purpose. So let's say I have a LinkedIn account and I use a password for it. And I then open an Amazon account and use the same password for the Amazon account. And if my password is compromised on the LinkedIn account, what that effectively means is my Amazon account is also compromised. If I then use that password across many other accounts, then effectively all those accounts are effectively compromised. So that is password reuse. So in the case of Colonial Pipeline, what happened was an individual within Colonial Pipeline used a password on a different site, and that site became compromised, and that password was also used on his Colonial Pipeline VPN, which is how the hackers got hold of that password and got into Colonial Pipeline. So don't reuse passwords, and we tell our people time and time again not to do that. I think another key point is that the barrier to entry to ransomware is dropping fast. What do I mean by this? I mean 5, 6, 7 years ago, the skills required to carry out this kind of attack were almost nation state, and the tools that were available at the time were nation state tools. But now criminals have hold of ransomware tools. They write their own tools, and they can carry out attacks. And they carry out ransomware as a service attack. So in other words, you could go on the dark web and you can contract criminals to actually carry out ransomware attacks on your behalf. And that's ransomware as a service. Does your board have a policy on ransom payments? This is an interesting one. Do you know whether your organization would pay a ransom, and do your executive or have your board made a decision about whether they would pay that ransom or not? And it might be something for you to think about when you leave this webinar. Does your government have a policy on it as well? I know the United Kingdom's policy is not to pay ransoms, and that is certainly our policy within NTS as well. And finally, are you prepared? So just imagine that you come into the office one day, everybody sits down at their computers and nothing works, and there's a red screen in front of you demanding money. Nothing works at all. Can you try and figure out what effect that would have on your company and how long you could sustain that effect for? So are you prepared? I guess you're all eager to see the demo now, so I'm going to hand over now to John. John, if you want to take over, and let's see what the worst is that could happen.
Thank you, Kesh. A couple of things. I'll talk about the incident. First of all, when I was developing the ransomware software for the demo, the software was actually developed a few months ago for a demonstration within Nuclear Transport Solutions. When I develop software, I generally develop in a sort of development environment, a machine, and I test it in a different environment. But as I was I was on a, let's say, a short deadline. And as I was testing the software, I pressed the sort of debug button as I was testing it, and I ran it on the development machine, and it encrypted all the files on the machine, which was a bit of an own goal. But luckily, the encryption algorithm that's in the demo, because it's only for a demo, is quite basic, and I had the key, so I had to quickly write a decryption algorithm to then decrypt all my files back to the way it was. But yeah, you can. It's almost like the bomb maker that blew his own house up. But yeah, and the other thing I'm finding quite interesting, I'm about to give a demonstration about ransomware and a phishing attack, and lots of people are dropping their email addresses in the chat. I just find that quite amusing. Not that I would do anything illegal, of course. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Hopefully you'll see that. Is that okay? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, thank you, John.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate what can happen during a phishing attack and downloading malware inadvertently and running malware on a machine inadvertently, and then the installation of malware. So this machine here, I'm going to play the role of two different people. So this machine here is just a typical Windows 10 machine. Those that observe it will see that the license is expired because it's quite an old enterprise evaluation. I only use it for demos, I should say. So that should be fine. This is the Windows 10 machine. So this is the victim, and what I'll be trying to do is switch between two machines. And this one here, the black screen, is the attacker's machine. So this is the malicious actor, we should say, and the Windows machine is the victim, or the person whose machine has the ransomware installed on. So it's just a typical Windows 10 machine. Antivirus is running, Windows Defender's running. The user has email. The user has lots of files, and I'm going to just show you the files before we run the sort of phishing demonstration, just to show the type of files on. This is my little dog. There you go, sticking his tongue out. He actually had some cheese on his tongue at the time. But I'm actually going to exfiltrate this data as well, just to demonstrate how you can take files from a machine once it's been compromised. Also, the user stores credentials in the credential manager, which is good practice, but it's also possible to steal credentials once you've compromised the machine. If you want to see, I'm not actually going to show you how that's done in the demo, but if you want to see that, it's in the demo that's on the YouTube link, so you can look at that later if you wish. So I'll just quickly switch to the cyber criminal. So the cyber criminal is using a machine, and he or she is running something called command and control software. And the command and control software is basically used to send commands to the compromised machine following successful compromise. So once the malware calls back to the command and control machine, the cyber criminal can then issue commands to the controlled machine. They can steal files. They can try to laterally move through networks, within organizations. And basically take control of assets within an organization. So the initial compromise, the attacker is looking for a foothold into the network, and that's the part I'm going to demonstrate today. So if I go back to the victim's machine, I'm going to demonstrate how we can send a phishing attack in the form of a Word document. So I'm just going to log into the email account, and this is a genuine email account, and it's a genuine email. And it's a genuine Word document. Well, sorry, it's a malicious Word document, shall we say. And so it basically runs some code in the background. So what I've tried to do, just to make it a little bit sort of apt for this demonstration, is to put some King's College type stuff in to try and make it look realistic. So the victim will download the Word document, and I'm going to open the Word document, and I'll just close the email. Should just take a second to open. I should also point out this is quite an old version of Office as well, but the exact same attack works on the new version of Office 365. So if somebody notices, oh, that's quite an old Office version of Office, it's not the actual version of Office that's vulnerable.
Thanks, John. Just while that's loading, just to clarify to everyone, that's a spoof email. I work at King's College London. I have not emailed John. That is a malicious person.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. This is not a genuine King's College email address. I could probably go back and show you actually, just very quickly. If you see, I've tried to make it look like a King's College email address, but it isn't. It's a fake email address, and that's quite common in phishing attacks. You'll see that they try to con people into clicking on things by thinking it's a genuine email, but it's not a genuine email from King's College London. So Microsoft do put some sort of protections in place by stopping macros from running. So what we try to do is we're trying to get the recipient of the document to click the link. And attackers will try to do that. So in this instance, we've created a fake encrypted blob. So this is encrypted information. We've put little hooks in things like, we have encrypted the file to comply with GDPR regulations, and we've tried to make it look like a genuine King's College London document. So what we're trying to do is get the end user to click the enable content, because as soon as the enable content button is clicked, the malicious code will run in the background. So this is something that people within organizations have to be aware of, that if the email that they've received is not trustworthy, then we should definitely not be clicking the enable content button. But to carry out the demonstration, I'm going to click the button anyways. And of course, as expected, it doesn't decrypt the document because it's not an actual encrypted stream. But it gives some sort of fake message to make the user think that, oh, it's just failed to decrypt. So when I close the Word document, we can see on the Windows desktop, it doesn't actually look like anything has happened. But if we then go back to the attacker's machine, we can see that it's opened a what's called a reverse shell back to the Windows 10 machine. And all the reverse shell is, as I talked about earlier, the malware has run on the Windows 10 machine. It has made a call back to the command and control software, and it has basically given the attacker access to the machine remotely. And this could be anywhere in the world, provided that a connection can be made. And because it's it's called a reverse connection, it traverses company firewalls and things like that if the firewalls haven't been configured properly. Oops, sorry, put the wrong command in. So we can see there's a session, and if I open that session, hopefully you can see that if I go to, I can basically send commands to the machine. And I'm just going to very quickly show you how you can exfiltrate data before I run the ransomware. So all I'm doing is I'm just issuing commands on the machine. And if we go and we can see that the picture of my dog was there, Toffee. So I'm going to download that from the machine. I think it was a PNG file. Yeah, it was. And we can see it's downloaded it. And if I open my King's College folder on the attacker machine, we can see that I've been able to steal data from the machine, which granted is only a picture of my dog, but it could be any sort of data. And if we go back to the victim's machine, we can see you can't actually see that anything's taken place. It's all hidden in the background. The process is hidden. So, so now what I'm gonna sort of show is I'm gonna run the ransomware. But before I run the ransomware, I'm just gonna sort of hopefully people can see that the cyber criminal is present on that Windows 10 machine. Now, if this was in an organization, what the cyber criminal will be doing is they'll be trying to stay persistent for a long period of time. So they're generally referred to as advanced persistent threats. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get extra privileges, they're trying to get extra credentials, they're trying to exfiltrate data, they're trying to see if they can move further into your network by moving from one machine to another, looking for vulnerabilities in software. And Kesh talked about the WannaCry ransomware attack earlier on, and that moved very quickly through the NHS because there was lots of vulnerabilities in the NHS systems that were vulnerable to the type of attack. The underlying vulnerability was called Eternal Blue, and that basically made the malware wormable, and wormable means it can move around a network pretty fast by compromising other machines and then installing the malware on the other machine. So it was spreading through the network really quickly because certain machines hadn't been patched properly. So I'm just going to run the malware now. So sorry, not the malware, the ransomware. And this is this is going to almost destroy the sort of target machine. So I've run the ransomware from the attacker machine, and when I switch back to the victim's machine, fingers crossed, we should see that the ransomware is executed. So I'll just switch back to that machine, and we can see that the ransomware is executed, and we can also see that all the files have been encrypted. And I'll just try and find the picture of my dog, and we can see that we can't actually open the picture of the dog because it's been encrypted with a key that the victim doesn't see or don't know the key to decrypt the files. But the ransomware has been installed, and we can see we've left a little message on the desktop saying that we want some $300 worth of Bitcoin, and that is the demonstration. Hopefully that was useful. Thank you.
Thanks, John. That was really useful, and I think fascinating to see both ends of a system, because I can see myself going around my day, and you get sent things as an academic, you get sent things all day, all the time by different people from the departments. So I can definitely see that.
I think the key, Carl, is do you trust the sender of the document? If you don't trust the sender, do not run the scripts.
That's good to know. Cheers, John.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, John. Kesh, back to you.
Yeah, okay, I'm just going to start my screen again. Hopefully you should be able to see that.
Wonderful. Yeah, on good practice to prevent ransomware attacks.
Okay, well, thanks, John, for that. I'm always fascinated every time I see that, and I've seen that a few times now. So let's look at some good practice to prevent ransomware attacks. I'm going to present a list of things now, and each one of these things in and of themselves will not protect you. Protection against ransomware is about an onion skin layered approach. It's defense in depth approach. So protection at various different levels. And actually, this is not a full list of things either. These are just some of the important things that we think. So the first thing is that this isn't working. That's the first thing. There you go. Update your systems regularly. So, I mean, we tell people this all the time, and I'm sure on your home systems you set your updates to automatic. If not, you should. and your operating systems and your software should all be updated every time an update is available. And like I say, that in and of itself will not protect you 100%, but it is a layer of your defense that you should keep up to date. The second one is implement good antivirus and good monitoring, network monitoring software, and use a VPN. And again, in and of itself, it won't help you completely, but it is part of your arsenal of defensive tools. The third one is carry out regular backups. And this is really important, because if you fall victim, then you need a way to be able to recover files that are not encrypted. So you need to keep an online and offline backup. The NCSC have released some really good guidance on how you can do that. We're going to put the link in to the chat thread for you on that guidance. And they call it the 3-2-1 approach. So 3 backups, 2 online, 1 offline. I think that's right, John. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah. Sort
of, yeah.
Good. So the important thing is, if you have an offline backup, if your system gets encrypted, then the offline backup is not encrypted, and therefore you can use that to recover your systems very, very quickly. Fourth one is test your backups and test your recovery. So it's all very well having those backups in place, but if you haven't practiced bringing them back into production, then the time that you need it, that might fail, and you've failed in your endeavors to recover from that attack. So test your backups regularly and test your recovery system regularly of the offline backup system. Ensure strong passwords are being used. Actually, I should add here that strong passwords and secure passwords are being used that aren't reused. So strong passwords, again, we have some guidance that we're going to put in the link for you on what a strong password actually means. In essence, for me, a strong password, it's about password length more than anything. Not just about the length, but mostly about the length of the password. Anything that's, I don't know, 14, 15 characters password is probably a good password. Have a look at the link that we're going to send you in the chat thread. And along with that, keep the password secure. So I use a password manager at home. I'm sure other professionals around here will use password managers. If you don't, then it's probably a good idea to do so. But if you are going to use one, then have 2-factor authentication applied to your password manager as well. In other words, a username, a password, and one of those numbers that randomly changes through an authenticator app. The importance of staff training. So this is where things get really important, because I had a look at the BBC website a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, and I looked at the cyber security section of the website, and 100% of the attacks that had occurred that the BBC were reporting on were due to a human error, a human either doing something that they should do, or a human error, a human not doing something that they should have done. So an example of something that they should have done that they didn't do was, it could be like change a default password. They should have changed the default password but failed to do so. And an example of the opposite, which is something that they shouldn't do that they did do, is clicking on a link. They shouldn't have clicked on that link, but they clicked on the link. So it's really important you train your staff on how to make these operational decisions whilst they're sitting at their desk, being very busy doing their work. Phishing simulations will help, and you know, a program of awareness and training and security culture will also help. Software allow lists. They used to call this whitelisting. This is called software allow lists these days. And this is making sure that only software that is authorized and approved by the corporate entity is allowed to run on your system, and no other software is allowed to run. And finally, segregation of systems and hosts. So this is a bit like, I suppose if I was in a big room full of people, let's say there's 100 people and one of them has COVID, then it's highly likely that if I'm there for any length of time, that all of the people in that room are going to catch COVID, and I'm going to catch COVID as well. However, if there's 100 people in 4 different rooms and one person has COVID, it's really difficult for COVID to spread. So that a network is very, very similar. If you segregate your systems and hosts within a network, then it's very difficult for malware to traverse from one part of a network to another part of a network without an awful lot of effort on the part of the attacker. So those are just some of the good things that we think will prevent ransomware attacks. I'm going to revisit this question here. And if we could just move to the poll again, please. I'm just interested to see whether anybody's changed their mind about ransomware and paying the ransom. Carl? Interesting. Less people, I think, are saying yes.
Thanks, Kesh. Yeah, so previously we had 5 people say yes. We had 7 people say no to paying ransom, and 7 people were unsure. So we've increased the number of people who think you should not pay a ransom.
Okay, that's really interesting. So let's just get into a discussion about this on my next slide then. So I'm going to return to my presentation. And it's not working. Excellent. Microsoft Edge is not responding. Oh dear.
Okay, great, Kesh. I can put the slides on beside if that's
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah,
absolutely. Let me just find the slide for you.
Yeah, so the next slide should say, should you pay the ransom?
Excellent. Okay, just coming up to that now. Excellent. Is that where you are? Where?
Yeah, that's the one I'm at. So I think if you click the button, law enforcement in the UK don't condone the payment of ransom demands. I think I've already said that. If you do pay the ransom, there's no guarantee that you will get access to your data or computer. So you take a risk in paying a ransom. The second point is your computer may still be infected anyway, even if you pay the ransom. So you pay the ransom, your files get decrypted, but if the ransomware is still in your system, then it's potentially possible it could be ransomware again sometime in the future. And finally, you'll be funding criminal groups, and that's not something that I'd want to ever to be part of. I wouldn't want to be seen to be funding. That's a reputational matter for the company. So I think it's very important that your exec and your boards have a discussion about whether you should pay ransom or not. I think there's another, the next one is, yeah, it could be that you're more likely to be targeted in the future if you pay ransom. So people will think, well, these guys paid up, so maybe they'll pay again, so let's attack them again. Having said all of that, I think there might be situations where you have no choice. For example, if people's lives are at risk. So the NHS decided to pay the ransom, sorry, not the NHS, the Colonial Pipeline decided to pay the ransom because of the effect that it was having on the United States at the time and the state of emergency that was declared. If it's affecting people's lives to that degree, or if it's even affecting people's lives full stop, in other words, there may be deaths as a result, then life always takes priority, and you have to do everything possible in order to preserve that life, and therefore you might consider paying the ransom. But as a general rule, I think you're right, you shouldn't really pay a ransom as a general rule. I hope that was an interesting discussion for you. And then I think the final point on this one is around cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is an interesting one. So cyber insurance will allow you, for example, to insure yourself against losses for these types of attacks. But insurers will only insure you if they're assured that your systems are protected, are well protected. So I wouldn't consider cyber insurance until you have a very mature cybersecurity system, and you're considered to be very well protected. And I wouldn't talk about the fact that you have cyber insurance either, because if an attacker finds out you have cyber insurance, then they may attack you because they know that you're insured against it, and you'll pay up. So just a few things to think about there as well. Does anybody here actually have cyber insurance? So this is another wee poll. If you could bring up that poll, please, Carl. Now I can't actually see the results of this, so if you wouldn't mind, Carl, just talking through that.
Absolutely, Cash. No worries. So we've got 10 people who have voted so far. One respondent does already have cyber insurance. 7 have said they do not. 3 don't know, and 0 have put that they're considering cyber insurance. So the majority, 7 out of 11 now, do not have cyber insurance, but no one has put that they're considering.
Okay, so I mean, that's fine. That's kind of what I was expecting. Most people don't have cyber insurance. I mean, I don't fully understand the cyber insurance market, so I'm not an expert on it. However, it might be something you want to consider, but please only consider it if you have a very, very mature cyber security system and you know your system well, and you think you're at a high level of maturity in that sense. And then I think the final one is a word cloud. I'm going to get you to, just before we wrap up, to think about what are the key activities that would protect you from ransomware. And we've seen a few things in this presentation. So have a little think yourself. Just put in some words. What key activities do you think would protect you from ransomware?
Thanks, Kesh. And I've got some thoughts on that there. Some excellent one on training, which is coming through now.
Again, I can't see this. My Microsoft Edge has crashed, unfortunately.
Thanks, Cash. What I'll do, I'll take you through the word cloud, and got a couple of respondents, which is great. The way the word cloud works is those which have more respondents are larger in the word. So training is coming up, and that's quite large. Changing passwords, using a VPN, assuming a breach. So I guess there's the presumption that you're compromised. Strong passwords is coming up a lot. System updates, updating your systems and your software. Backup is on there, but also openness. I think that maybe that sounds quite interesting. Perhaps that's
interesting
training. But Cash, happy to move over when you are.
Yeah, okay. I think it's significant that training's come up, but this is, after all, an NSCP a training webinar related to security culture. So training absolutely is probably up very, very top of the list, near the very top of the list. But all of these other things are all very important too. I think we could probably publish this for the attendees, and just as a reminder to you of all the things that are going to help you. Intrigued to know what openness means in this context, but this was my final slide. I think I just have a question slide next, so I'm happy to end at this point and open the floor.
Excellent, thank you, Kesh. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you to John and Lauren too. So we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. I may stop sharing that question slide, but thank you, Kesh. Just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have questions, please put them into the Q&A tab or button. I can see a couple of questions coming in already, so thank you. But just while people are warming up, if I may, Kesh, yeah, I think the training element is important, and I think you're right. The whole idea behind the NSAP, the Nuclear Security Culture Program. Some people might think it's weird why for a culture program, we've invited a discussion on ransomware and malware. But I think it goes back to the point you said at the beginning, which is almost everywhere and all attacks, there's a human element in that, and the importance of training. Is there anything outside any one part of training you think is particularly important, more important than another, or is it general awareness, like not to click links, to use trusted people, trusted sources, and the like?
I think it's horses for courses. So I think people are different in the way they learn. So some people are more visual, some people are more tactile, some people just like theoretical concepts. Some people want to know why, some people want to know how. So I think you need to have a mixture of things that you provide to your users in order to engage them properly. So, for example, within NTS, yes, we do phishing exercises and all those sorts of things, but we also do these sorts of demonstrations. People who see the effect of ransomware are more likely to understand the actions that they take at their desk actually have an effect on the company. So doing physical demonstrations is really handy. And then we also do things like lunch and learns, we call them. So we invite people at lunchtime for 15 minutes, 20 minutes to discuss a particular topic, either in cybersecurity or security generally. And so like this, we have an entire program for a year that covers a year of training and awareness activities. And we're very varied in the way that we do it.
Thanks, Kesh. And yeah, I think the maybe variation is really important as well, because people do get fatigued, and being able to swap around different messages or variations on a theme. Excellent, thanks, Kesh. I've got a couple of comments in the chat function in addition to the Q&A, so I'll just read out the chat if that's okay. I know you said you didn't know too much about the insurance market for cyber security, but Chris Bacon has just put in that it's almost as if the cyber insurance bubble has burst. Premiums have skyrocketed over the last few years. So fewer companies are renewing their insurance as prices go up effectively. So I don't know if that's of use to people, but if you are considering getting cyber insurance, yes, it seems like it will become more expensive over the long term. Kesh, if I may, I've got a question from Steve Osborne in the chat, and then I think we'll turn to the Q&A, if that's okay.
Yep.
So Steve's question is, VPN was suggested on at least the word cloud. VPNs, I think, they can help keep you anonymous, but do they help mitigate against malware?
John, I think that might be a question for you.
So I think there's a couple of things. I mean, VPNs on their own aren't going to protect you against malware, because if you access your email via a VPN and you open an attachment that's malicious, then you will be compromised. The other thing I would say is the VPNs aren't within an organization like Nuclear Transport Solutions. VPNs aren't used for anonymity. They're used to make secure connections, for instance, from home into an on-premises environment. They're not used for anonymity. They're used to protect the traffic between the computer that's sitting in an untrusted network and the corporate environment. So I don't think VPNs on their own are going to protect you from malware attacks. No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Excellent. I think a couple of other bits in there. Kesh, can you see in the Q&A, are you happy with Lyndon's question? Would you like me to read it out, or would you like to?
I'm afraid I can't see anything at the moment. So.
No worries. Let me just juggle some things on my desktop, and I'll get to the Q&A. So 2 excellent questions so far, one from Lyndon and one from Sam. So thank you for those. Lyndon's question, for perhaps you or John or even Lauren. Ransomware attacks have demanded payment in various cryptocurrencies, but ransomware is much older than crypto. And some experts argue that blockchain's ability to increase the integrity of information supply chains could actually help prevent ransomware or malware attacks. Due to the public or pseudonymous nature of many distributed ledgers, law enforcement agencies have repeatedly recovered cryptocurrencies from ransomware attacks. So given the blockchain and the encryption element, does NTS have a position on this balance between the threat of crypto and ransomware attacks or the potential for DLT to improve the integrity of data and information supply chains?
DLT, I didn't quite understand that. What does that mean?
I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Lyndon. If you could put that in the chat, that would be great. Oh, distributed ledger technology. Thank you, Lyndon.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm not sure there's a link between the two. And again, I'm not an expert on blockchain. Blockchain is an assurance mechanism I've read about, and I think it's in its infancy in the nuclear field. It's something that we're going to look at. It's in our stream of things to look at, the use of blockchain. But I don't think blockchain in and of itself would prevent a ransomware attack on your corporate network. Would you agree with that, John?
I'll be honest, I'm not too sure. I'm definitely not an expert on blockchain. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, whichever way you look at.
I think the only thing I would add is ransomware attacks aren't always. I know it sounds really strange. Aren't always looking for ransom. They can be used as diversions for other types of attacks as well, while data is being exfiltrated, almost like it's a diversionary tactic. It's like the organization sees this very visible ransomware attack, but there's lots of things going on in the background that's very quiet, which is the actual intention of the attack. Yeah. So I don't think it would stop it, but again, I don't know very much about blockchain, if I'm being honest. I'm not an expert in that field, no.
Yeah, so I'm sorry if we couldn't answer that question fully, but apologies for that.
No, thank you both. I hope that answers Lyndon for the best of circumstances. But yeah, I know it's a very niche question. Thanks both. And Lyndon says thanks in the chat there. Thanks, Lyndon. Last question, I think for now then, is for one or the others, and again it comes back to cryptocurrency. But do you feel that there's a greater likelihood of ransomware attacks during peak cryptocurrency values? Colonial Pipeline, perhaps one example, on the 7th of May 2021, the BTC, Bitcoin, valued close to 60,000 per coin, near all-time high. A month later, when authorities reclaimed over 80% of Bitcoin, the value of it had dropped. So I guess, do you think that'll be a predictor of potential attacks, or is it one where you just ask for more crypto if it's lower? But given this kind of ransoms can't be conducted in a fiat currency for obvious reasons, if the reason for ransomware attack is purely financial and not political, is there any possibility that malicious actors time their attacks to crypto peaks? Yes, so would crypto indicators be price perhaps be an indicator, or is it more opportunistic and people take what they get?
I don't know is the answer. If I was a cyber criminal and I just wanted to make money, to me, to some degree, I think it's irrelevant what the value of the crypto is, because I would just adjust how much Bitcoin I wanted, depending on the equivalent value in currency. So if the value was really, really high, then I'd probably be asking for a lower amount of Bitcoin, for example. Again, I'm just trying to put myself in the mind of the adversary. John, would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I mean, cyber criminals are criminals. They're going to take as much as they can, and they're not. If we showed in the demonstration, it's not just ransomware. They're sitting there in the background, even after the ransomware is executed. They've still got a presence in the network. They're going to exfiltrate data. They're going to take things. They're going to try and take credentials. They're going to try and access, email accounts, bank accounts. They're going to take as much as they can. They're not just going to concentrate on that one issue, I guess. and they can, also they can have a presence in your network months before the ransomware attack actually takes place, because I guess they're going to get the most out of it if they can do things like destroy your backups as well, because then they've got more chance of being paid. So they're going to stay present within a network, trying to figure out where your backups are, how they can encrypt your backups, how they can compromise your, your admin systems so they can get access to backups and things like that. They're going to do as much as they can to make their efforts worth as much money as they can, I guess. At the end of the day, they are criminals.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And actually, from that demonstration, I think what made it click for me is that I saw you typing in the command, but you chose to do that at time and your own leisure, effectively. It wasn't an automatic, I've clicked on a link, gosh, everything's gone now. It's you chose it, you clicked enter, and then you chose when to do it after seeing files, after looking at people's photos of dogs and the like on the network. But that wasn't an automatic reflex. That was something you, as a using a hacker persona, chose to do.
And I think we've touched on some of the prevention mechanisms for ransomware attacks, but some of the other things you need to consider as well, which are inside things like the NIST framework, is actually how do we monitor our systems, because people may be there for long periods of time before the actual ransomware is executed. So there's a big, there's a bigger picture than just the actual phishing and the ransomware attack.
Thanks, John. And actually, I think just maybe the last question, because we're just past the hour now. So thank you both, and thank you all. Actually, I know Lauren's been there in the background, so thank you. You mentioned privilege, so access rights and privilege escalation previously. So does that fit into the, I guess, the surveillance phase, or the so once you're in a system? Yeah, it's an escalatory thing. So once you've got a foothold in, people will kind of look to exploit what they can. Do you want to go through that?
So yeah, so I guess it's all part of it. I don't know if Kesh has done some presentations in the past about the cyber kill chain.
Yes.
Yeah. So the cyber kill chain, I guess once you're in a system, it evolves, because if you're trying to laterally move from one system to another, you need to do some enumeration, and you need to do some reconnaissance to find out what vulnerabilities are there on other systems, or if for instance, if you're on a foothold and you can harvest credentials for instance, administrators to be able to move through the system. So the cyber kill chain, it isn't a static sort of picture. We go through that phase, we go through the next phase, the reconnaissance phase, the attack phase, and then we're on a system, and that's it. It's sort of, it has to move all the time, because when you're trying to move from one system to another system, you then go back to the start of the kill chain, which is kind of about reconnaissance and trying to figure out how you're going to laterally move through systems, how you're going to escalate your privileges, how you're going to compromise other systems. So I think, if I understand the question properly, the kill chain moves, or your position on the kill chain moves as you try and compromise other systems.
No, absolutely. And I think that's it. I think the idea that, it's not a one-time thing, and people are on your network. They're able to go and exploit. And maybe that's for me, the biggest takeaway, which is once you're on the system, and when someone executes an attack, there could be weeks, days, months, whatever in between those.
Absolutely, and they're going to spend as much. That's why it's called an advanced persistent threat. They're going to spend as much time as they can looking to get as much gain from the attack that they can, I guess.
Excellent. Well, all of you, thank you so much for your time and expertise. I know we're past the hour now, so thank you for everyone who stayed on as well. And so, Lyndon, thank you for the questions, and I see your chat, message in the chat, that some ransomware perhaps has been done in fiat currency, not just crypto. But I think that maybe reinforces the point that it's crypto is perhaps fashionable, but maybe some people just like unmarked bills or Swiss bank accounts. But no, thank you all for your time. Sally has put a small survey into the chat. So please do take the time to click the Quartix link there. It's great for us to get your feedback. I see lots of positive messages in the chat saying thank you to all of you. So I'll pass those on. Lastly, we will see you later in March for the next webinar. That's going to be on the nuclear security regime, just ahead of the amendment to the Conference on the Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials, or a CPPNN. That review conference is in March, so we'll have a small taster of what of how that contributes to nuclear security regime. So in the meantime, thank you to NTS. All of you, it's great to see you once again. Thank you all for listening. We're looking forward to seeing you all at the next webinar too. So thanks very much. Cheers all.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks guys. Bye.